Welcome to another episode of Family Business Experts, where I'm joined by speakers, authors, consultants, advisors from around the world who can make a huge impact to your family as well as your business. And today I'm joined by a very dear friend of mine who I've known for almost 2 decades now, and that is Mr. Nigel Risner. He is a best-selling author, multiple books. I'm going to share a few of them later on with you. He's a consultant, advisor. He's an expert in employee engagement, working with leadership teams. He's a motivational speaker, has delivered thousands of paid speeches around the globe. And it's a real pleasure to have his time because he's stuck in the UK in lockdown, and I managed to grab him for half an hour, 45 minutes. So Nigel, welcome.
Thank you, Rich, for having me to be part of your wonderful series. And I feel privileged I'm part of your speaker profile here.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out. So I've got a whole bunch of questions for you, in the short time that we have. So one of the things that you've spoken about for years is peak performance. You've benchmarked people, you've studied winning teams that don't win, great leaders who do an average job, below average job. Tell us about what's the ingredients here of great leaders? What do they have? And which leads to peak performance?
So in my humble opinion, people who have high self-esteem take risks, and people who take risks have high self-esteem. So a real peak performer knows they're good enough without other people's approval. And what's amazing for me doing these type of calls is that I'm often speaking to hundreds and hundreds of people, and I'm not getting my normal, it's going to sound a little bit weird what I'm going to say here, my normal standing ovation. Traditionally, we'll be on stage, you'll finish, people are very nice, they stand up, they clap, tell you how wonderful you are. When we're doing this type of work, we're speaking to a screen, and often there's no feedback at all. And if you're what I call applause orientated instead of results orientated, that is not a peak performer. A peak performer knows he's good enough before he opens the door. It doesn't mean I don't have to work hard, but I don't need your approval to tell me I'm a phenomenal success.
Right. So is that also linked, Nigel, to people talk about self-esteem, self-confidence? Does that come into this?
So we have a real issue with the word self-esteem, especially in the UK, that it's a word that's not used because it's very British. We want to be high achievers. But self-esteem, underlying all of it, is who you are is good enough. Carl Rogers said this. Who you are is good enough if only you'd be openly. So I wake up in the morning, and of course I'd like my wife to say, you're the best thing I've ever seen, but she's just never going to say that. But I know that we've been together 35 years. I've got 2 great kids. I've got hundreds of clients that like what I do. People buy my books, but there's a slight issue because 2% of the world don't like me. When you have high self-esteem, you accept that. When you've got low self-esteem, you want those 2% of people who don't like you to love you because you think that's validation. So if you understand that high self-esteem is recognizing who you are is good enough, you don't need other people's approval.
So first thing I'm getting from what you're saying is you are good enough. That's like a mindset internally, which leads to peak performance and good leadership. What would be 2 or 3 other things that drives either performance or in the context of maybe being a family business owner, being a great leader, being a great executive, being a great entrepreneur? In that capacity, what are some of the other things that you've witnessed over the years of what helps people get there?
Okay, so you lead people and you manage things. So if you want to be a great leader, the first thing you have to do is give some of your team and your family a piece of your heart, not a piece of your mind. And great leaders give their staff and family a good listening to. What you want to do is to hear their point of view. Authoritarian leaders just tell people what to do. They're in direct mode. They're what I call managers. Great leaders, great family dynasties understand that the only way forward is to listen to their people. And over the years, I have got better at listening. Now I'm going to challenge you. How do you spell listen, Reg?
2 A's.
How do you spell listen?
I know you well. I thought you're probably tricking me here, Nigel.
No.
Where you're going to take me here.
How do you spell listen?
L-I-S-T-E-N.
What are the last 3 letters of listen?
T-E-N.
Yeah, so in the old days, we learned 2 ears, 1 mouth. You need to do twice as much listening as speaking. Great leaders listen 10 times the amount because you're missing things if you're only listening twice. You know this more than anyone. There's a phrase that says, some of us are listening and some of us are waiting to respond. And great leaders are listening. And you know the phrase I'm going to use now, they're in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people all over the world, if you're in the room, be in the room. And if you're on Zoom, be on Zoom. You know,
could you expand on that, Nigel? Because some people who are watching this have never heard your famous one line. If you could repeat it, and could you tell us really what is behind that,
okay,
and why people don't do it? You know, why people don't get that sometimes.
Okay, so I'll give you an example of how it works. So many people who are listening to this podcast, webinar, presentation are listening, holding their phone. Now, I want you to visualize you're interviewing me and I'm holding my phone. How do you feel if I'm holding my phone while you're talking to me? Especially in the Middle East.
It depends. Are you holding it or are you actually using it?
No, I'm just holding it at the moment.
I don't mind. I don't mind you holding it.
Okay, and then I do this.
Yeah, if I'm in the middle of engaging with you and you do that, that could be annoying.
Okay.
And
Now imagine
doing it, I could find that I could feel that you're being a bit disrespectful.
Now it gets one stage further. Imagine it rings in the middle of this interview, and I look at it, and then I say, "No, don't worry. Let's continue the interview." How will you feel?
Yeah, I would get more and more annoyed to a point where I'd really want to have a chat with that person and say, "Look, are you listening to me? Are you engaging with me or not?"
Okay, but it goes much deeper than that. When we hold our phone, what we're really saying to the other person is, I'm hoping something becomes more important than you, and I don't even know if this is important, but if my son, I'll give you an example. If your mother rang you right now and you saw it was your mum, what would you do? I'm putting you under the pressure here. It's your mum on the phone. You haven't spoken to her for 4 weeks. What would you do?
Oh yeah, I mean, if it's my mum, I'm going to say, "Nigel, will you excuse me? Is it okay if
Time out.
I'll take the
So
call."
what you're saying is, if something better comes along, I'll take it. So all of a sudden, what you're actually saying to me is, I'll be in the room a bit, but if there's a better offer, I will take it.
Yeah, but my mum knows I never pick up the phone anyway.
Yeah, well, that's a separate issue, and your wife definitely is not going to get through to you. But in family businesses and in family dinners are a classic example. So in this lockdown, my daughter is having dinner with us every day for the last 5 weeks. That's the first time that's happened in like 15 years. She went off to university. No, she's
I was going to say, if you're doing this virtually, wow.
No, she's actually at home with us for the last 5 weeks, but she's been at university traveling the world. At dinner time, between 7:30 and 8:15, all three of us put our phones on the side and we engage in communication. That's being in the room. Mm-hmm. Now, let's go one stage further. In the Middle East, and I've done lots and lots of work in the Middle East, people hold their phone like a noo-noo blanket. It's their precious thing, and they're scared of FOMO, fear of missing out. So they hold their phone just in case the Sultan of Brunei or King Ahmed, whatever he's going to call, just in case there's an emergency. I need to tell you now, the most disrespectful thing you can do is to be talking to someone whilst they're holding their phone, because what you're actually saying to the other person is, I'm not in the room for you because there might be something better.
So what's going to happen then once we've got chips put into our forehead where it's going to be on all the time? Then what, Nigel? In 10 years time?
But it nearly is that now, because you're wearing an iPhone and every 5 seconds your wrist is moving. So we tend to do this. I'm begging people who are listening to this, if you want to be a great leader, give yourselves time to be in the room with the people who matter. And I only do sessions. The reason this interview is only going to be 42 minutes is because I think people can't focus for longer than 42 minutes in the morning, about 30 minutes in the afternoon, and after about 6 o'clock, most people, if they started their day at 9, can't focus at all. But we have this thing about they can't be in the room.
So one is about not waiting for validation. 2 is being absolutely present to people when you're listening to them. okay, and not getting distracted. Yeah, so these are two things people can take from this episode today and apply immediately, and that will shift them up to become.
But I'm going to go one stage further, because I've met your kids. Your kids would much prefer presence than presence. Now, I'll repeat that. Your kids would prefer your presence more than presence. Now, I don't dispute if there was a brand new BMW 325 convertible, they're going to quite like that.
Just having a look outside. No, I don't see it. No.
But when you come home, they want their dad. They want to speak to you. But if you're holding your phone while you're talking to them, you're nearly saying, and get ready for this, I love you, but not enough.
And that works, but that works both ways, doesn't it, Nigel? That's not a one-way relationship.
No, both ways.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing in business when the president of an organization comes downstairs to one of their team and starts chatting to them, and they're holding their phone. What you're nearly saying to your member of staff is, you're good, but not good enough for my attention.
So this is really good. And again, for viewers, if you haven't got the patience to last to the end of this episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share the video, leave your comments, okay? So moving on, you've published a lot of books. This is, by the way, I was going through my library, and there's not many friends I have as best-selling authors where I've got 4 or 5 of their books.
It's interesting, the copy you've got is a very, very, we don't even have that anymore. We now converted it to 10 heads are better than one.
There you go.
That's pre-1999. That's how long we've known each other.
Yeah, no disrespect to the rest of your books. This is actually my favorite.
Now, what's really interesting, it would be to someone like you, because you like detail and filling things out.
Yeah.
My latest book, It's a Zoo Around Here, there's only a few words on each page. Oh, I knew you'd like that one, because it's all about your strengths. Yes, that's classic Reg.
And then we've got, this is another one of Nigel's books, the first time when he started getting into, well, You Had Me at Hello is a classic one-liner, but about networking. And then there was a version before this one. Okay, I've got that as well.
The third version of the same book.
Yeah, then we've got the Zookeeper series, and the latest one, for those of you who want to watch the book video I've done on Nigel's book here, there's another episode on our channel, watch it, and I'll tell you a bit more about the book. But Nigel, tell us, how did this start, this personality traits for leaders? How did the Zookeeper book series concept methodology start? And can you tell viewers a bit about it?
So I know when you were in the UK, you did work with junior chambers of commerce and places like that. So I was doing an event at Whipsnade Zoo, and in the corner of my eye, I could see a man with a long base trolley with about 6 or 7 buckets on it. And each bucket had on it a different animal. There were like the camels, there were lions, there were the monkeys, there were elephants. And on the very back of his grey, brown overall, it said the words Zookeeper. And I had one of those epiphanies, which has probably earned me $1 million. And we've all had those moments where something happens and it's a light bulb moment. And great leaders trust themselves. And often the obvious blind, you get these moments of madness and you got to follow your gut. Mm. So I realized that this zookeeper knew that the animals needed different food in order to make them healthy. Mm-hmm. And I had this idea that I wonder if a leader knew what food to feed their team, what praise they needed, what writing and confirmation they needed, what accolades they needed, how that would be the same for a leader. Remember I said you lead people and you manage things. So if you want to lead your people, you need to lead them in their style, not yours.
So you've now developed, animals essentially, from elephants to dolphins to many other characters, and each one of them has their own traits, which could be linked and identified with a specific person in an organization or in a family.
So this came about that there are many profiling tools, whether it's Myers-Briggs, Belbin, DISC, Insight, Colors, there's thousands of them. And one of the problems that I faced was that whenever I went to an organization, most people did not know who other people were. They knew who they were. Yeah. So I was blessed that in a way, that if you were a high D, if you were a high E, whatever it is, they were my lions. And everyone could identify, yeah, he's a strong leader. He comes in, he does snarl a bit, and people could picture they're a lion. Then you have people like me who are playful. I haven't followed the system. Reg sent me, for everyone who's listening, he sent me this great list of questions. By number 5, I got bored. I didn't read them all. And that's classic monkey behavior.
Mm.
Then you've got the elephants who are a bit OCD. They have bookshelves with every book neatly put in. Then you've got the dolphins who are lovely, supporting, nurturing people. And when people could identify themselves like that, a bit like your wife, Reg, who's loving, caring, nurturing, and supportive, and then you come in barking an order, and then there's a bit of a...
Tucky, did you hear that?
But at that point, communication gets lost. So you're happily married. We had my 35th wedding anniversary, and I'm married to a massive, massive elephant. Now, she's a size 10, by the way, but she's a massive elephant, and she demands a list. She demands being on time. She has a system in place, and I'm the worst. So we developed a very, very simple process, and it was called the zookeeper. And if you can understand the zookeeper's role in sport, if you can understand the zookeeper's role in business and the zookeeper's role in family, and I think most people, and there are lots of different religions, but there are some people fasting right now, okay? And the minute the fast comes in, the zookeeper's got to make sure the family come together, the family distribute the food, and we sit down together. The monkeys have probably broken the fast 5 minutes early because we couldn't wait. The lions are going to be exactly on time, and the dolphins are busy preparing the food for everyone. And the elephants, there's still about 2 more prayers to do because they just haven't finished it.
So again, we'll get viewers, watch the other video on the book video show regarding the books. So Nigel, just moving into some other areas of the time that we have, you have delivered thousands of paid presentations as a keynote speaker.
About 2,500 now.
2,500 speeches.
In 65 countries.
In 65 countries, okay. And so let's talk about that briefly, and also publishing, let's say, your first book. So someone who's watching this right now as an entrepreneur, as an executive, they would love to create more visibility for their brand. We all know how important that is, especially with a crisis. If your brand doesn't stand out, you're dead. So what tips can you give if someone's getting into speaking for the first time, maybe as an executive or as an owner, or they've got a great story and they want to publish their book? What tips could you give those people?
Okay, so the first thing you have to remember is if you're going to share a story, let me use my animal model as an example. There are hundreds of personality profiling tools, and the minute I used the zookeeper as the catch, people kind of went, I understand that. So if you're going to write a book, remember that the person who's reading it has got to get into it. So have you read any John Grisham novels?
No.
Okay, so John Grisham has sold millions and millions of books.
They're in the wife's library upstairs.
Yep, I'm sure. But ask her why she keeps buying them. It's because as you get near the end of a book, you kind of go, I want to see the next one. It's a bit like a James Bond thriller. If you're going to write a book, remember the person who's reading it better get into it really quickly. So the first chapter of a book has got to be the best. The middle bit doesn't have to be that great, but the end bit's got to be your action points. So if you're going to share a story, no comedian ever says this, by the way. I'm going to tell you a joke in a minute. Let me tell you what the joke's about. I'm then going to tell you the joke, and now I'm going to share the joke that I said. They just get on with it. Yeah. Most speakers and most authors spend so long telling you what they're going to tell you, by the time they've told you, you've forgotten what they told you.
Yes.
My opening line in every book or in every speech is the same type of thing. Just by a show of hands, how many people in the room want at least 5% more success in some area in your life? I just go straight on stage, I'm in your face, and I just tell you.
So starting off well for anybody with their speech is critical, yeah?
No, it's more than critical.
Yeah.
Because if you don't engage literally in the first 20 seconds, you won't get them back. What happens is you leave the room. I said to you before, if you're in the room, be in the room. If you don't engage me in the first 20 seconds and make me feel it's going to make a difference to me, I'm going to turn off.
Nigel, can I ask you, because you've run speaker boot camps, over the years for speakers.
And we did one in Dubai, if you remember.
Exactly, and that was a real hit, and a lot of people have grown their speaking businesses off the back of that boot camp. So with executives, with owners, one of their things for them is fear. They're great one-to-one, they're great in small groups, but put them in front of an audience, they have this fear of, not being able to speak in public, words may not come out. What's your thoughts around that, overcoming that fear?
So we all know the real fear is we don't want to look stupid. We don't want to look like we don't know our subject. So imagine you asked me to come to Dubai and speak about aerodynamics, the automobile, and the intricacies of a left wheel based engine. I don't know about it.
I was going to send you that email later. What are you talking about?
I'm sure there's a conference on it. But the idea that you're going to speak on something you don't know, it's just ridiculous. If as an executive, you're going to speak about leadership, your mission of your business, your family dynamics, the 4 generations that set the business up, you know that stuff. But what you have to do is speak from the heart. It's not speak from some logical reason. People just want you. Do you know what the word intimacy really means, Reg?
No idea.
Into me you see.
Okay, very good.
And if we got that from you, and I got who Reg really was, I'd want to listen to it. But you telling me about all your accolades and when you arrived and when you turned left on the airplane, and then a man met me at the airport and he drove me here. I don't want to hear that. I want to know, what difference have you made? Why are you still married? Why have you got 2 amazing kids, etc., etc.? People want to buy into people. And you still know that people buy people and then they buy their products. So I don't know why owners are scared to share, because 3 or 4 people, when I speak, I just did my biggest speech 4 months ago in front of 6,500 people. I could only see about 40 because the lights were on me. So I just spoke to the small group and occasionally looked up. So it looked like I was speaking to an audience. But you know where they were all looking? They were looking to the left and right on screens.
On screens, yeah.
So all you want is executives to think, if I was in the audience, what message would I want to hear?
So let's go back. These are really good tips here. So one is really, really critical is the opening. Be yourself, share real stories, get into it. Middle bit, don't worry about too much. And then make sure the end is packed with something that's actionable, yeah? Something that summarizes or is actionable, some sort of take-home value.
Or they feel spiritually inclined. So I just finished a speech. You're like this. So my last part of my speech was, there are 4 things you need to do to be a phenomenal leader. Do you know what they are?
No,
you need to drink. Yep. You need to drink, steal, swear, and lie. They're the 4 attributes of phenomenal leadership. Now, at that moment in time, obviously the audience is going to think, this is a bit nuts. Reg has brought this guy in as a world-leading authority, and I've just told them all to drink, steal, swear, and lie. So you need to drink from the fountains of knowledge that are constantly flowing in from our books and libraries. You need to swear to make this the best day of your life, because you never know it's going to be your last. You need to steal a little time each and every day to do something for someone else, even when you know you won't get the credit. And when you lie down in bed, thank your God that you've got dreams and you can make them possible. And all of a sudden, I've just changed the audience. I've gone a little bit spiritual. My voice has changed a little bit. And the audience go, I get that. So there's a bit of a shock. There's a bit of a surprise. I sometimes play a video at the end of a speech, which is funny. I do a self-deprecating joke. But I start with a bang. The middle bit has normally got no more than 3 key lessons. You can't remember much more than 3 things.
Right.
And then I finish with something that people go, I get it. What you don't want to do is to keep saying, in summary, in conclusion, one more thing. There's only one more thing of one more thing.
Okay, for now for my 50th conclusion of this episode. So you've given some good tips there around speaking. When it comes to publishing, you've published 5+ books and lots of variables of those books as well. What tips would you give for someone now that you've done it, looking back, if you had to do it all over again? What would you do? What's the 3 tips you want to give for publishing your first book?
Publish it today. So you may have heard of Create Space. There are hundreds of ways you can self-publish a book and have a book, and it becomes credibility. So I waited 8 years to write the Impact Code. Now this is published by Capstone Wireless. It's my it's my big stuff. And I waited too long, but having a published book gives me a bit of authority. The problem is it's getting harder and harder to get a publisher to pay you money for a book. Whereas when I wrote It's a Zoo Around Here, it literally took me 3 days to write the book. Then we had to do the graphics, but we have sold probably 100,000 copies of a self-published book. And the advantage of a self-published book is you are in charge. You can change it whenever you want.
Yes.
And I don't know if you have Create Space. So Create Space is an Amazon product. You can upload your book onto Amazon. They do all the printing. They send it out and you get paid.
That's great.
So there are hundreds of ways of publishing, but what you want to do is, have you got time, Reg, today to write 600 words on a piece of paper?
Yeah.
Okay, if you did that for 365 days, you'd have a phenomenal book.
Yeah, you end up with one of these eventually.
Yeah, but if you look though, that most people are worried about the end result. Start with the end in mind, and I promise you, the first book that you wrote wasn't that great.
Yeah, that's right.
But at least you had a book.
Yeah.
Then the second book you write is a lot better. By the time you write your third or fourth, you get into the habit of what your public want. So it took me 15 years to do the follow-up of It's a Zoo Around Here because I was lazy. Successful leaders are not lazy, but I was lazy and I couldn't get my head around the new animals we wanted to introduce. And then within 5 months, it all came together.
So good tips here about self-publishing, getting started, having the discipline, just writing a few words every week and getting there. One thing that comes up, especially when you talk about motivation on stage, is why do so many people out there need to be motivated instead of being self-motivated? Why is this disease out there? Now, obviously, it's great for people like you because you get booked week in, week out to go and inspire and motivate people. What's your thoughts around this whole subject?
Okay, so it's a bit like going to the dentist, okay? An apple a day keeps the dentist away. If you eat 7 apples, you've still got to go and see the dentist. See, and that's what a lot of people do with motivation. What you really want with motivation is for somebody to confirm some of the ideas in your mind are correct, and it's reinforcement. There is very little that is new. I don't know if you've ever read the Old Testament of the Bible.
I haven't, no.
Can I make a suggestion? Read that and ditch half your books. There it says, where there's vision, people flourish, and where there's no vision, people perish. That's about vision statements and family dynamics. So we know that if we create a compelling vision statement, companies and families flourish. Why do you need to write the book about DNA? We just know, create a great vision statement and let people follow through. Tell the total truth faster. Jacob and Cain and Abel, same thing. Most of those stories are in the Bible. They might be in the Quran. They might be in Catholicism. They're all there. Family sharing, fish on a Friday, the Sabbath dinner, Sunday prayers. It's all there. The problem is somebody goes, it's too deep, it's too religious. So someone will do a story based on their postman. Someone does a story based on 4 mice. I mean, Spencer Johnson's book and Ken Blanchard's book, The 1 Minute Manager, and I've forgotten the cheese one, Who Moved My Cheese? 24 pages, sold 38 million copies. Do you know the only thing that sold more is the IKEA catalogue? I mean, it's just bizarre. More people have read the IKEA catalogue than a motivational book. Here's the question. The reason why we want motivation and we need motivation is that sometimes we get lazy. And then somebody says, you know what you should do? Stand up, make a phone call 2 of your existing clients. And we go, that's just brilliant. Who would have thought if I called my clients, they might want to do a bit more business with us? If you spoke to some of our family members, maybe we'd have a tighter family unit. When you sit down at dinner, talk to your family. All of that was in the Bible.
Yeah.
But we've forgotten. So you need reminding, and motivational speakers are normally good storytellers. So if you ever watch
the good stories, but being reminded, sometimes we already know what we need to do, but we need to be reminded, and maybe we need a push. Yeah, we need a bit of a nudge.
Do you ever watch American ministers on a Sunday on like some of the Sky channels, whatever? There's a couple of ministers. All they're really doing is doing stories and then adding a psalm. Chapter 7, Psalm 7, Joseph said to whatever. And then they do this long story and everyone goes, that's brilliant. It's a Bible story which we've modernized. And that's what most motivational speakers do.
Well, you know, some really good tips there. I mean, how do people get hold of you? Let's say that they need to find out more about being a zookeeper, getting hold of some of the products, maybe booking you to speak, whether it's virtually today, in the future, for real, face-to-face. How do they get hold of you? And
well, there's three things they can do. If they want to go onto my website, which is nigelrisner.com.
And we'll make sure that shows up in the description for everybody.
There is a quiz online. We've got some books on my store. If they mention the name Reg, we will do a special discount for all of your listeners. How's that?
That's awesome.
I've no idea what it is because I'm a monkey and I don't know how to do that. But I'll make sure my CEO, and we have a CEO of our organization, and she's the chief elephant officer. And she will organize all that for you.
And you are the chief zoo officer, yeah?
No, I'm the chief monkey officer.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, I'm the CMO. I have a CEO. And occasionally, when I'm really professional, I'm the zookeeper.
So on that note, one question, and we're done. When it comes to raising children, the next generation to become leaders, you know, you've done a great job with your family. What tips could you give? People are listening to this right now, have got young children or young grandchildren. You've done a lot of work on motivation, employee engagement, leadership, communication skills, networking, zookeeper roles. In summary, what are the top 3 things you recommend to raise great next generation leaders?
So with children, especially aged between 5 and 25, it's one for them to see your character. So they're going to be modeling off you. Do this, Reg. Just do this. Make a circle like this. Put it to your chin. Yeah, and that's your chin, by the way. Yeah. And what do you think most people do? They just model your skills. So if you want to be a great leader,
I was heading there.
I know, and it took you a bit of time.
Yeah.
And that's because you just modeled my skills. So great leaders model great behavior. Great leaders share family stories. They share why we do what we do, and they demonstrate what they do, and they can see what you do. So if you sell a product, and this is going to sound really weird, you would be amazed how many families don't have their own products in their home. Doesn't matter what you sell, whether you miniaturize it. So if you do combustion engines or you do JCB diggers or the equivalent of, make sure you've got them in your home and you can say to your kids, this is what we do, and show them and bring them to your factories, bring them to your place of work so they get to find out why you do what you do and why sometimes you're late home for dinner. And then the third thing is show them what your fathers, your grandparents did and how you learned these skills. Very often we say to people, I went down the mines when I was 4. They don't understand what that means.
I love that.
Show them,
sharing the stories, yeah.
And explain to them.
Yeah, we did that with a client recently, and the grandfather, who's the first generation, has now put all those stories together. And eventually the idea is, like your book, is go and get it published.
Yep.
And pass that down to future generations. And it's just full of stories.
And if anyone wants help publishing, let me know. I've got some great people I can put you in touch with.
There you go. So on that note, Nigel, I really appreciate your time from the UK. Nigel's a dear friend of mine. His details are below in the description. Go and check out his website. We hope to get him back again in the future, talking about some of his new books and projects. So don't forget, as a summary, he's given you some tips around leadership, peak performance. He's given you some tips around public speaking. He's given you some tips around publishing your first book. He's given you tips around being just a great human being, being motivated.
I've done a lot.
Yeah, we really should be paying him for this, but you know, it is coronavirus time, so he's donated 45 minutes. And be a zookeeper. So on that note, Nigel, God bless you. Thank you so much. And
Thank you so
we'll
much
catch
for
up
having
again
me. I look
soon.
forward to speaking to you soon.
And again, for those of you watching this, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, leave your comments, and come back again to watch some of the other episodes on the Register 12 TV channel. Bye for now.
Thank you so much.